my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to start the vlog for Springathon week 4. I know, week 4 already, and it's already May 26th, so I'm definitely into week 4, but my work schedule has been so crazy that I haven't had time for reading. Luckily for me, my work week is now done, even though it's Thursday. I got done early today, and I have essentially a 5-day weekend over Memorial Day holiday here in the United States. So I am hoping to really focus on my reading and vlogging this weekend, and I will bring you with me. I have finished the group read for Springathon, Small Bodies of Water by Nina Minya Powell's. This is also the Book Naturalist Book Club pick for the month. So I'm not going to talk about it in detail here because I will be doing an individual review of this book. But this is a collection of essays by Powell's, who is a mixed race person. Her parents, her background is one parent was white and one parent was Chinese Malaysian. So she grew up in New Zealand and in other areas around the world. She had a very cosmopolitan lifestyle. She lived in a lot of different places, and she continues to do so as an adult. And so this collection of essays is really her ruminations on connections to the place that you come from and the connections to the place that you live, a lot of which is framed through her connection with water. She is a swimmer, and in each place that she lives, she has a special place that she swims, and that plays into a lot of these essays. These essays are also written in a very unique style, I thought. They're sort of vignettes, linked together, and that worked sometimes and not all the time, but like I said, I will get into it more in detail in my review of this book, so look for that at the end of the month. I am also working on this book, this is the naked hardcover of The Big Burn. The Big Burn by Timothy Egan. This is a book about the beginning of land conservation in the United States in the early 1900s. I'm about a third of the way into this. I'm on just starting chapter 7, page 116. And so far this has been like the setup of what's going to happen. So there's a little introduction that's only a few pages long, and it sort of describes this major forest fire that happens in, I think, 1910 or 1909. I can't remember the exact year off the top of my head. I think it was 1910. This fire starts out west in sort of the Idaho area in the national forest that had just been established. And the U.S. Forest Service was very young at that time period, and they were tasked with firefighting, wildfire fighting. And this is about what happens in this major wildfire in the West. And we haven't really gotten into the actual wildfire part yet in the first 100 pages. It's just the setup of how we got to what happens in the early 1900s with wildfire. Like I said, this is the beginning of conservation movement. This talks a lot about Teddy Roosevelt and Gifford Pinchot, Gifford Pinchot was like the original U.S. Forest Service employee, the godfather of forestry in the United States. And Teddy Roosevelt was the first president who put aside areas of the U.S. for protection, and he was quite evangelical about conservation and putting aside these special areas for the good of all of the public. And it's really interesting to see that being developed in the United States at that time, because it's such a common concept for us now. You know, we have these national parks, we have these national forests and other protected areas, and they've been there for a long time in a lot of cases, although there's still new ones being created all the time, and those are controversial at times. There was one just in my state, the state of Maine, a few years ago that was very controversial. But presidents can still, even now, use the executive order method to create national forests and national monuments and that sort of thing. National parks actually require the vote of Congress. So all of that stuff was being developed in the early 1900s, and it's really interesting to see who was involved in that, who was against it, Both Democrats and Republicans thought Teddy Roosevelt went too far with what he was doing with setting aside lands for everyone to enjoy. But I think it's really fascinating. Plus that, I think Teddy Roosevelt is a really fascinating and flawed, deeply flawed, but also a fascinating character. So I read The Bully Pulpit about him, and this sort of, it slides right into that same style of history. So if you don't like your nature writing to be heavy on sort of general history kind of stuff, you might not like this book, but I'm finding it really fascinating because it's sort of both things that I really enjoy: nature writing and stuff about nature, and also historical stuff. And how did these things even happen? How did we even wind up with national parks and national forests? I find that really, really interesting. So yeah, The Big Burn by Timothy Egan is the book that I'm currently focused on for Springathon. Like I said, about a third of the way in, and I will be trying to finish this one over the weekend. We shall see how we get on. Finished The Big Burn by Timothy Egan last night. The subtitle of this is Teddy Roosevelt and the Fire That Saved America. So I really, really enjoyed this. This turned out to be an excellent read, right up my alley. It's divided basically into thirds. So the first third is about Teddy Roosevelt and his efforts to set aside land in the United States for the benefit of all the public, the beginning of the National Park Service, the beginning of the National Forestry Service, and Gifford Pinchot, who was the first ranger, the first head of the U.S. Forest Service, and their efforts to protect the vast wilderness, forested wilderness out west particularly. And then the middle section is all about this humongous forest fire, the biggest forest fire in American history that happened in 1910 it covered like 4 states, but Idaho and Montana were the biggest impacted areas. And that the whole middle section is just like edge of your seat, turn the pages, can't stop reading to see what happens. Very, very impactful and adrenaline forcing because still that door handle in the back. You're just gonna have to live with it, I guess. Because it's very much a blow-by-blow account of the people who were in the caught in the forest fire and the towns that were impacted and things like that. So that was very, very exciting in the middle part. And then the last third is what happened after that fire. What happened after, through the end of the Taft presidency and the beginning of, Teddy Roosevelt trying to come back to power for a third term with the Bull Moose Party and all that stuff, and what the impact of the 1910 fire was on the U.S. Forest Service and conservation in general in the United States. So very, very interesting historical perspective on conservation, and forest fires and fighting forest fires from the point of view of the U.S. Forest Service. So I marked a little passage to read to you because I just think the philosophy of this book was summarized in this one sentence. And this is a speech that Teddy Roosevelt made after he returned from Africa and was touring the U.S. again during the William Howard Taft presidency. He said, this is Teddy Roosevelt speaking, "I believe that the natural resources must be used for the benefit of all the people and not monopolized for the benefit of a few." So, yeah, right on, Teddy Roosevelt. I agree with you on that point. So, very, very interesting. The other thing I will say is I read The Bully Pulpit last year or the year before, I can't remember, and that is very much about how Teddy Roosevelt was able to use the Bully Pulpit, the first time really a president was able to use his platform to push for progressive policies and for policies that he particularly wanted to see implemented, and use the media and his speeches to the public in order to encourage change to happen. And William Howard Taft was his handpicked successor. And then Taft, so in The Bully Pulpit, it was really about the relationship between those two men. And it was very favorable to both. In this book, William Howard Taft does not come off very well at all. Like, at all. He is shown to go back on his word to Teddy Roosevelt about conservation issues, and he comes off looking pretty poorly. I will say that Timothy Egan spends an awful lot of time talking about how overweight William Howard Taft was, and I just didn't think that that was necessary. Like, he could have poor policy decisions, or he could be ineffectual, or he could be disloyal, or any of these things, but like, I don't see why his weight was such an important point that Egan was trying to make. So points off for that. But as far as the conservation discussion in this book and the information about this humongous forest fire, which was super exciting and also just frankly amazing what happened during that wildfire. This was really, truly an excellent book, and I'm really, really glad that I picked it up and read it. And thank you again to Judy Brown, who sent me this book from her own collection, because I am very thankful to have read it. And I picked up last night, another book off my Springathon TBR. I picked up this one, Susan Orlean's On Animals, and this is an essay collection that spans really her entire sort of writing career, different essays and articles that she wrote for different publications. And I think I've read the first three essays in this, and I'm very much enjoying it. This is very, lighthearted and charming and just cute writing about things like chickens and people who keep tigers on their private property and things like that. So yeah, the first article I think was about, now I've forgotten because I read it in the middle of the night when I was up with insomnia. So let me just check the table of contents. Yes, the first article was about chickens and keeping backyard chickens. I thought that was really interesting and fascinating. The next essay was about show dogs, and in particular one show dog, a boxer, and like blow your mind what people will spend their money on for show dogs. And then The Lady and the Tigers was the next essay, and that was about a woman in New Jersey who kept like, I don't know, I think at one point she had like 25 tigers on her private property, and one got loose and sort of ran around this town in New Jersey. So that was really fascinating as well. So yeah, enjoying this one so far, and I will continue to work on this one. Scary ghost. Where's the scary? Oh, it's Bryce. Oh, I thought you were a scary ghost. Oh, okay. Ahoy the ship!
Sound like a fawn? Alright, well that's it.
So I figured I'd better come on here and finish up my last Springathon vlog. It is May 31st, and so this will be the wrap up. It's been a fabulous reading month for nature nonfiction. I finished On Animals by Susan Orlean, and this is a collection of pieces that she had published in other outlets over like the last 20 years. I think a lot of these pieces were from the early 2000s. She is has been on the staff as a writer for the New Yorker. I believe it's the New Yorker for many, many years now, decades, in fact. And so some of these, quite a few of these, in fact, were first published in the New Yorker. Yes, the New Yorker. Some pieces were also published in the Atlantic and Smithsonian. And like I said, they span about 2 decades. And they're all articles that she wrote, essays that she wrote about animals. A lot of stuff about domesticated animals, a lot of stuff in here about chickens. She's really, really obsessed with chickens and raising chickens. And those pieces were delightful. There's also pieces in here about people who keep tigers in the backyard. There's a really excellent piece that came out, I think in 2002, about Keiko the orca, who was in the movie Free Willy and who then launched a whole nonprofit and sort of world looking on attempt to rehabilitate him, turn him, enable him to rewild and go live in the wild in the ocean. And I had not read that article. It came out when my second child was only like 1 year old. So I was not reading a lot at that point. And if I was reading, I wasn't remembering anything. So that article was particularly interesting to me. I remember the movie Free Willy, but I don't, and I remember the worldwide outrage at the conditions under which he was kept in the aquarium. But I didn't remember like all the efforts to figure out how you could take an animal like an orca who had been habituated to humans and then try to encourage him to be wild again. And that was really fascinating, and all the effort that went into that. You know, I don't know, I won't spoil what happens, and the article doesn't say what happens in the end, but I went online and Googled what happened to Keiko in the end, or Free Willy, or Willy, I guess we should say, so I didn't know, and I won't spoil it for you if you want to read anything about him and not be spoiled, but I was not surprised at the ending to that particular story. There is other articles in here that talk about like dog shows and the craziness around dog shows, which blew my mind as well. So there were some articles that I really, really liked. However, there were some pieces that I just didn't connect with and thought were kind of slow and just not a topic I was interested in. So again, with lots of essay collections, this was a mixed bag for me. The pieces that worked really worked, and then the ones that didn't, they were okay, but they weren't anything special. I will say that the last essay in here, I think it first came out in like 2015 or so, and she rewrote parts of it to publish in this collection. So has some, takes into account some of what happened with COVID-19. I found that article particularly interesting because it discusses things about, you know, urban versus rural living, and I think that was particularly important discussion to be having during this particular time in history. So that one was really good as well. So that's On Animals by Susan Orlean. And then I did read one more Green Ideas book. This is The Dragonfly Will Be the Messiah by Masanobu Fukuoka. And this was originally published in Japanese and translated by Larry Korn. It came out in a book called The Ultimatum of God Nature, and it was first published in 1996. And so this is just an excerpt from that bigger publication. And so Fukuoka, who died in 2008, was a farmer and a philosopher and was really an advocate for sustainable farming methods, particularly what he called nature-based farming. And so it was very interesting to read this little book. It's about 87 pages all told, which is a lot about his philosophy of how humans should live on and with the earth, and why current economic systems like capitalism and communism are very destructive to how we farm and how we live with nature. And I thought those ideas were really engaging and interesting. And then at the end, there's a whole appendix which is a how-to guide for how to do his natural farming techniques. And I thought those were really, really fascinating. So this was a great addition. This is the number 17 in the Little Green Ideas, the Penguin Green Ideas collection, and I thought this one was very, very successful. I'm really glad that I read it. Plus it has this cute little cover with this dragonfly. I love that. So glad I read that one. Just snuck that one in here this afternoon, the last read for Springathon. So as usual, had a great time with the nature nonfiction during the month of May. Loved Springathon. I hope you all found some nature nonfiction or even nature in fiction writing that you could sink into during this past month. And please remember that this is the kind of reading that I love to do all year round. So if this is a topic that interests you, please continue to watch my videos because I will be talking about lots of these type of books throughout the year. Anyway, that's it for me for Springathon. I hope you are all doing well and finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.